Hello and welcome everyone to another edition of the Watson Weekend, your weekly dose of e-commerce entertainment. I'm your host, Rick Watson.
And it's Jessica Liseski coming to you from Paradise. It's the
Oh,
beautiful WeWork office here. Thanks to my internet, always reliable and shutting me down today. So here we go. New
here we
podcast
go.
location.
Exactly. Yeah, we're going to try to do something different here, which is produce a professional show. That's our pledge
Oh,
to you.
that's always the dream, guys.
Right? This is what
We
we're
really
doing
do
here.
try. Yeah.
Exactly. If you have some
Uh,
topics, I mean, it's true that we have so many topics to cover today. We had to cut some stories for time, but you had a couple of announcements for us.
Yeah, I do. So, first, we just wanted to say thank you to Channel Engine. They are our partners today that are bringing this to you. The Kevin Bacon of e-commerce, the 6 degrees of separation between you and great listing capability. And Rick, you guys did a webinar recently, right, with Channel Engine. So,
Yeah, we did
tell
a
us, yeah.
webinar. Yeah, we did a webinar in the last couple of weeks that talked about some of the biggest trends out there for merchants and customers. We talked about AI. Of course, we had to talk about AI. So if you want to go check out,
A
there's a
little
whole
trend.
replay. Yeah, there's a whole replay. You can look at my LinkedIn feed. I've been posting about it this week. But if you have any comments about it or about the show or about the week, we respond to your comments because we care.
We care,
We
love,
care. Yes.
lots of love. Thumbs up. The StreamYard thing doesn't have the emoji, not emojis, but the
Yeah.
AI yet where it comes through. So something to work on. Well, I think we're ready to hop into headline hangover. There were a lot of stories that happened, and I yet again, Rick, find that we are hitting Nostradamus status because we've been calling a lot of plays for quite some time. And one that we called was this Christmas in September that's just been delivered by the Fed. They've
That's
delivered
right.
the first rate cut since 2020. So it's about half a point.
Yay,
We
golf clap.
Woohoo! It happened, people. It really happened. But we called this at the beginning of the year. There were some analysts when we did our very first show, and we said what was going to happen, what were some of the trends. We talked about this rate cut. Some people said June, July. Watson Weekend called the fall. Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. The summer was entirely too fast for what was going to happen here. They're talking about, we just did a half a point rate cut. So maybe you can break it down for us. What does it mean? Does it mean more to come, or is this going to be how it is for a while, Jess?
Yeah, no, there is more to come. Look, they've seen the labor slowing down. They've gotten inflation to about 2.5%, which is 2% is what the Fed had said they wanted to see it at before they would make a rate cut. So it's pretty close. But they did signal there's going to be more this year, and then 4 cuts in 2025 and 2 in 2026. So giving that little glimmer of hope in the wild of the economists. So I think we'll have to see how all of that shakes out. It was funny. The Daily Show had a pretty funny recap where they're like, oh, more people can afford their homes now. Actually, no, they can't. They'll just be able to afford the bus ticket to ride by the house they want to buy. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll
Look,
see what happens.
it's not going to
Yeah,
change home prices for a while. I mean, there's not enough supply of homes. And so I
correct.
think that's the biggest thing. I'm looking forward most to the return of the happiness index. So we'll put that on
She,
your agenda coming
she'll
up.
be back. She'll be back. There's
She'll be
there's
back.
there's so much to talk about.
Exactly.
Some people are not happy though, and I think you're going to
Ooh.
break down what's going down in our next story. Some people in Bellevue, Washington, are not feeling the love.
Yeah, exactly. Amazon just in the last couple of days, it feels like Amazon's PR machine is in overdrive lately. It's like the About
Yeah.
Amazon news page. There's more posted there in the past 2 months than in the past 2 years. And this one is sort of, I call it crouching tiger, hidden layoffs. And the backstory is last year, Amazon said, okay, everyone back to the office 3 days a week. And that was like, psych, 5 days a week, suckers. And at the same time, they're saying, oh, we're so more productive. Just trust us. All this virtual stuff, this internet, it's a fad. You're coming back to work just so we can prove you're here. And by the way, I don't know what happened, but somehow we have too many management layers. Did you catch that in the memo? And they said that 15% of the manager to contributor ratio must be eliminated by some arbitrary date to this arbitrary number. And so
spans and layers, Rick, spans and layers.
Spans and layers. And so I don't know, the cynic in me, is there a cynic in me? Maybe there's only a cynic in me. And at that point, the fact that you're putting this into a return to office memo, if this was about return to office, you would just talk about returning to office and how productive your happy workers are. But no, you're going to eliminate many of them because you don't want them to come back. Please don't go. It's not us, it's you.
It's you. Yeah. Basically, look, this is the playbook, page 1 of how do we reduce our workforce. We're just going to lay the gauntlet down and put out a policy that is wildly documented to force people to quit. I mean, like look at any HR study, look at any outline. It is 100% proven people will leave when you force these in-office policies. So they're like, check, less severance we'll have to pay. Now they layer in these other organization type commentary. More for sure is coming. But you know who wasn't in the office last Friday? Andy Jassy, because you know what? He was sitting with Roger Goodell at the NFL game, Amazon Prime night.
Amazon Prime night. Yeah, I'm a big fan of some of the things that they do on Thursday Night Football. I can see how quickly that Aaron Rodgers is going to get pummeled on the next play. So that makes me happy.
That's AI at work for you. So yeah, there'll be a lot of stuff happening, more to come there. And, in another pretty hefty news week, we had some major de minimis bust that was happening. We've again talked about this on the show and talked about how it's really being exploited, right? So the number, if you don't recall what de minimis is, which I think most of you guys do that watch this show, it allows companies to avoid duties and taxes for imports that are below $800. It's been part of our trade law for 100 years. But this exemption and the number of packages that have been participating has grown from 140 million a year to over $1 billion a year, thanks to our friends at
Temu
and Sheen. I always forget. Shimu, Tarmu. So, the new requirements essentially are coming out of an executive order at this point. I think, there's been a lot of political pressure to make some changes here. And is this Biden swan song? We'll see. But there's a couple of things that are going to change. There's like a 10-digit tariff classification number they're going to have to add. It's supposed to help the people at the border more easily see what packages are qualifying for this. There's some requirements that are going to help with protection of goods that don't meet the regulatory requirements. So remember that announcement came out a couple of weeks ago that all of these products that have the minimal lead actually have more than minimal lead, and selling things like baby bumpers and car seats that aren't up to standards, which people are buying on these sites. People want to, now the government wants to crack down on that. Are there any other changes I'm missing, Rick?
Yeah, now it's not just your parents that want to give you baby bumpers that you shouldn't use anymore. It's Temu. And so any other changes? Look, the changes are actually good changes. The problem is these are suggestions to a Congress and the White House that is actually going to be completely rearranged in November. And so a lot of people are predicting a lot of doom and gloom for these companies. And I think those people have two problems. Number one is probably the government's going to shut down in the next month because we can't fund itself. So that's problem A. Problem B is if there's any, almost if you look at the history of e-commerce, who was the first if you think of a big company that circumvented tax law for many, many years to gain a huge advantage, if you could name that company, Jess.
I think it was our friends in Washington, right?
Yeah,
The Zon,
Amazon.
the Zon.
Amazing. And so it's so funny to see US corporations sort of cast aspersions on, Chinese founded e-commerce companies. Meanwhile, the new things are going to come out, and who has the biggest advantage and a $39 billion pile of cash? Shein and Temu. And so
Mhm.
those people, yeah, you could reduce their profits 10, 15% for these new things coming in, but you're not going to shut them down. And by the way,
No,
probably more small and medium businesses are going to be hurt by this than these large companies, unless you specific targetly this company's. I think it makes sense. Hopefully, it will clean up these marketplaces. I think those are great changes. There's no reason not to get information about the products that are
right.
coming into the country. Like, what are they? Are they safe? Are they compliant? The Consumer Product Safety Commission um, serves a valuable purpose in the market, and not to have those certificates of compliance is a big problem. Just because it's a cheaper item, it really makes zero sense
Right.
why we don't get the same information about higher products or lower products. Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, for sure. You're spot on, though. It is funny to see some full circle moments of like, hey, these guys aren't following the rules. Like,
Right.
P.S., you guys have been hear no evil, see no evil on the millions and millions of products sold on your marketplace site. But we're not responsible. That hair dryer blew up and caught your house on fire. Not
Yeah.
our problem. So
Yeah.
here we go.
Pot, meat, kettle. You're black.
Yes, exactly. So more to come on this. It will be really fun to watch. I think you're exactly right. This is not the shakedown everyone really hopes it to be. I mean, look, what a top's going to go from maybe $10 to $12, like big whoop.
Right.
Still less than $100.
Yeah. Speaking of, I have a Temu item that I'm going to reference later in the program. You're going to see it soon.
I can't wait. Do you have a rash or no?
I scrubbed it. I scrubbed it off.
Okay. All right. So bring us home with our last story here.
Yeah, next up we have Salesforce. Dreamforce has had a conference this week, and the question is kind of like Biggie says, was it all a dream? I used to read it Word Up magazine.
Oh,
And
look at that.
it seems like they're releasing features, but you're not sure if they're real or not. And so I'm going to break it down for you. The biggest thing that was released this week is what they call Agent Force. And so
Mm.
it sounds like a big deal. There's a whole force on it, and there's
Sounds like a
agents.
character from the Incredibles 3 movie coming
I
up.
know, like autonomous agents that are going to help you with your e-commerce site. And there are like really three different ones. One's for service, one for merchandising, and one for like helping customers with purchases, kind of like the Amazon one. But then there was this like small disclaimer at the bottom of their posting, which says all the features we're talking about may be released, may not be released. If they might be released, they could be released much later. So it's unclear if there was like a hallucination at Dreamforce or
Is this
things were
meta?
happening. Yeah, is it
Were we in a
meta?
virtual? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're wearing goggles. And so I think Salesforce, look, they have a lot of problems. Their product strategy seems to be acquiring companies and trying
Right.
to tell the market that these products are stitched together. Meanwhile, if you ask 100 people in e-commerce, what is the core of Salesforce commerce?
Mm-hmm.
And some people will say demandware. Some people will say Lightning.
True.
And Salesforce is trying to tell people they're going to rebuild Commerce Cloud on Lightning for the past 5 or 6 years. It's never happened. And so they're releasing these sort of bells and whistles to try to draw attention to the fact that there's really no innovation in the core of their product.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the market is starting to catch up to that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, this is at least, I guess, a rebound from Shop Talk where it was Slack and Tableau or
Yeah,
analytics and
I
AI.
love
So
it.
there's at least some commerce conversation happening. You're just saying it's not really solving the inherent problems of maybe it's not Salesforce obsolescence, but just them falling behind to people in the landscape, primarily Shopify.
Yeah, and exactly. And I can't tell you, I posted about this week, how many people email me, message me on LinkedIn saying, thank you for saying this. Even like former, current people. It's like, we just have a product and a marketing problem if you don't know what things are released and what's not released. And I think it's not only the market that has this problem, it's like normal Salesforce employees just don't know what the
Right.
offering is.
Well, if you're a
So
rep, what are you selling? What are you going? So there are contracts coming up this year, next year. What are you selling to retain those customers and give them the reason to believe in the future and that they won't be left behind as a retailer staying on your platform?
yeah, exactly. So Dreamforce, we're going to tell this like the nightmare,
Yep.
situation. And so I think that's an issue. It's perhaps Christopher Bouquet said, did they tip the hand with the roadmap and Commerce Foundation? Is this the beginning of the end of your demandware? I mean, what have they done with demandware since they bought it is the question. They just bought a POS system. It's not hard to think that the same thing will happen to Predict Spring that will happen to the rest of the platform. Will they reinvent commerce or not? All signs. Magic 8 Ball says outlook cloudy.
Signs point to yes.
Yes.
Well, we had a contrasting type of conference and event, right? So, Salesforce, where you're with your 42,000 closest friends, you went to Shoptoberfest, and that was a bit of a different scene, right?
Yeah, the scene essentially, Shopware put on a community building event in e-commerce, and I think it's probably the opposite type of thing from Dreamforce, where you're there with thousands of your, well-paid marketing buddies. Here, you're actually at an event designed to build community. You're not being sold software. Instead, you're drinking beer, eating pretzels, and munching on currywurst. So it was quite a fun event. They had a number of folks podcasting there. Brian Lang and the Future Commerce team, Scott Ohmsman and the Off Brand podcast, the Watson weekend, RMW Commerce was there. We did about 5 or 6 podcasts from the event. And so we have a few scenes from the show that I think you would appreciate, community building in e-commerce.
Love it.
We'll talk about this outfit in a second.
I want to know.
He's a real You know who that is? There I am with Jason, the president of Shopware.
So you were not the only one in Lederhosen.
I was not the only one in Lederhosen. I was the only one in fake Chinese Lederhosen, however.
Okay.
And so, yes, I'm somewhat scrubbing off the rash still from the situation. I was there. I was so funny. I was interviewing Jason Nias, the president of Shopware. I called him the CEO of Shopware, and he's like, whoa, hold on there, partner. Don't give me a promotion. I don't want that kind of responsibility. So apologies to Stefan. Jason Nias is most certainly not the CEO of Shopware. He's just the president. But it was a great time had by all. And I think our only question left is when is the next one that's going to be?
Yeah, it looked like a lot of fun. Sad to miss that. And that I think is kind of where commerce community is going, right? More intimate, unique networking events and opportunities. So it looks like it was a successful show.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we definitely look forward to doing more with the folks at with Shopware as well. So
yeah.
You might see RMW Commerce even put on its own events next year.
Oh, that'll be fun. Lederhosen style, or what's our theme going to be?
We'll come up. Might have to come up with something a little bit jazz, New Orleans.
Okay,
focused,
I like it. I like it.
yeah.
Or everyone has to pick their favorite Saints player.
There you go. Yeah. Speaking of which, I don't know if you know, the Saints are 2-0, so I have to mention that for a second.
I know. I was just giving you something, laying it up there for you, seeing if you could take it.
I'm taking all the bait.
We also had a really big shakeup again that was a call from this show. Even back when Nick and I were doing it together while you were on maternity leave, you know, we started to talk about what was happening at Nike. And I think before we dive in, we just wanted to do a little bit of a montage of our Donahoe or Donago.
Yeah. You know, I think the founder of Nike, Phil Knight, says, yeah, just go do it. Just do it somewhere else. You know, you and I have had a long history with Mr. Donahoe, going back many years to our eBay Channel Advisor days. And I think this should give our viewers just a little bit a taste of the history of our man, JD. Why don't you roll it here, Vinny?
Yeah.
You've turned.
Is that his high school photo? He's
No,
tall
that's
enough to play
college.
basketball. He could just like.
Yeah,
in
Dunk
here.
Central there. You know.
I can't remember when you were.
This is Kenny Rogers, folks.
When I
Where else are you gonna get Kenny Rogers?
Only here. Only on the weekend.
I swear.
Where does he graduate
We've been through everything.
I think that was when he was a commencement
Can't
speaker.
imagine anything we've missed.
Oh.
Can't imagine
Whoopsies.
anything the
Whoopsies.
two of us can't do through the years.
He aged
You've
very
never
quickly.
let me
It's
down.
Kind of like
You've turned my life.
what happens when you become president. You know, you kind of go a little bit young going in, and then
Yeah.
you get real old on the way out.
Yeah, exactly. It happened quickly, even to some presidential candidates.
Yeah, stress will get to you.
I
So,
noticed.
you know, it is it's an interesting story, right? Because you know, John has been credited with the turnaround of eBay. I was at eBay at the time that John was there. From a employee experience of the CEO being there, he was extremely visionary. He could hype up the organization. He could kind of talk the talk of like, we are here to win back our business, crush Amazon. So for sure, I can get why he's definitely he is the epitome of a CEO, right? And can command a room, command an audience. But bringing him into Nike, do you think that that's now a regrettable decision?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes without saying it's a regrettable decision. There are a couple of things that I think that happened. And you can see we have some imagery to show a little bit of the journey of Nike with their stock price and the introduction of Panda Dunks. I'm not sure what that was about. That was the last innovation Nike produced. Unfortunately, they were forced to sell off all of those. But the innovation of Nike is gone. Meanwhile, brands like Hoka and On have come on, and Nike has self-admittedly, quote unquote, missed the running revolution when Nike was born as a running company. I mean, there's really no other heritage to the brand. And it's kind of sad that the legacy of Mr. Steve Prefontaine, who doesn't love those old Steve Prefontaine running movies? I mean, that's so great. Yeah, they're the best. And
they're so good.
The fact that Nike lost its soul as part of Donahoe, he removed the product from wholesale channels, which is I don't know, about the silliest thing you could ever think of, because a consumer walks into a store and they don't see your product. Guess what? They're not going to buy it.
But Nike's so big, so cool. They didn't need those retailers.
Yeah, retailers, it's just overhead. It's just overhead, Jess.
Yeah. Well, it's actually interesting. Their demise was very well documented on LinkedIn by their former CMO, Michael Giunco. And part of the playbook that John had was bring in consultants, a la McKinsey, to help them do things like that, consultants do: restructure, cut cost, look for ways to streamline. It's not the innovation nation. It is the playbook of cut cost, layoffs, get rid of overhead to really drive EBITDA to the bottom line. And so really what happened was, to your point, they, removed what they call decentralized, right? And so they became a D2C led company. That was really the narrative. We don't need wholesale, or we just need less wholesale. We're going to get rid of all of these boutique type retailers. We're going to go to, your Dick's. I think they even pulled out of Foot Locker. Like they pulled out of even some larger retailers and kept that distribution really tight. Therefore, they could cut out their whole wholesale division. Essentially, they eliminated categories. So like they got out of, you saw them get out of golf, you saw them get out of and do less running. So a lot of these categories that started to and had been real key to them in expanding the brand and getting the brand into more hands, they started scaling back and cutting. And then they essentially changed their marketing model as well. And so, it had taken a lot to do and unwind all of that. And so do you think, Rick, now it's going to be, we're opening these things back up?
Yeah.
And doing it quickly?
I do think it's going to be difficult. And the reason is innovation doesn't just restart on a dime. When you stop innovating, not only do you lose your pipeline that you haven't processed, but the people are the ones doing the innovation. It's not like AI is coming up with new designs and then releasing them to the market autonomously through agents or something. I'm just, apologies to Salesforce. I'm sure I'll be sued for that one. But on the Nike side, all the innovators would have left. And so how do you attract those people back to the company to restart the innovation pipeline? You can only hope that the company has bench strength in the innovation, that maybe their ideas weren't listened to for a while, but there's a core of people who still believe in the Nike brand that are there. The new CEO maybe knows where some of those people are, because, if you look at the history of the new CEO, Elliott Hill, who, by the way, can I mention that he is going to make less money than Donahoe? Did I hear that right?
You heard it right. Yeah. Yeah. He's making less money and has a lot more work to do.
Right. And so you leave the company in worse shape, you're going to get paid more, and the new guy to turn it around is going to get paid less. Maybe that new person should bring in McKinsey to negotiate his contract like John Donahoe did.
Sure thing. Yeah. Well, it's not all John's fault, according to, on the innovation side. He's like, look, this like lack of progress on remote work, that's the problem. That's what stalled our innovation, because, we forced some people to come in and we lost some talent. Is that really the excuse to play?
I don't know. Amazon just told us that being in person is more innovative. So John is telling us the opposite. So I don't know who to trust right now.
The great debate continues.
Yeah.
So it's interesting about the timing. We actually did the show 2 weeks ago, right, where we started to talk about the CEO moves and how they were transitioning. Is this like, what kind of do you think was the catalyst that drove this to happen? Had it been in the works for a while? Because 2 weeks ago, when we were covering that story, we talked about who was the surprise that wasn't on the list. And you mentioned John. Yeah. And there was an article that had come out around that time that had said the board was supporting him. They were doubling down. He had Phil Knight's, like basically Phil Knight had his back.
Right.
So was there just too much external pressure, or what do you think was the catalyst that just drove this to happen?
Yeah, I think there was a huge article that went out there. I think it was in Fortune that said John Donahoe, the man who made Nike uncool.
Bloomberg,
Bloomberg. There was a huge Bloomberg piece, and I think that actually had some. You can imagine how many investors and financial types read Bloomberg. And so I can only imagine the board of directors just started getting pounded with requests. Why is John still there? And the activist investors, they see an opportunity. These folks smell blood in the water.
Yeah, they do.
The sharks start circling, and I think the board started to get pressure. John started to see the writing on the wall. And so I think it was a board to CEO conversation. I don't think it got to the point where they got forced by an investor, where investors have to create a website and then they create a damning presentation that looks horrible for the company. Yeah. That's exactly what happened in Peloton, unfortunately. And I think Nike doesn't want to become another Peloton and sort of avoid the bad press. Like, let's give John the bad press, not Nike.
Yeah.
And then, get ahead of the situation a little bit. Maybe it went a year or two too long, but I applaud actually Nike for making this move and
Yeah.
actually, whether or not the next person is a great CEO or not, it does seem to me that they need someone from the inside. And so I think that person understands the soul of Nike, where
Yeah.
Nike was great, over the Jordan era and after. And so there's a lot of innovation that the company has done in the market, not only in the product side, but the marketing side. I think that's what they're going to hope to restart.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at Elliott's experience, and that was one of the quotes that came out when they were saying, "Hey, this is our guy. This is who we're putting our belief behind because he understands the culture. He can rebuild those relationships and that trust with all of the different wholesale partnerships and other channel partners that maybe the relationship was very fractured and probably they are really upset at Nike and have invested their time and energy in some of these other brands like Brooks, Hoka, On, maybe even Adidas, right? To a certain
Right.
extent. So I think he at least will have the credibility to rebuild quickly versus probably someone totally net new coming in and trying to do that from the ground up.
Yeah, so I think we've taken Nike off of suicide watch, unlike P. Diddy, who just got added to that list. And so now I think the company has a good chance to turn around.
Yeah, turn around for sure. And nothing says a decision was correct in the mind of the investors than a stock price bump of like 8%, right? Wasn't it their highest performing day on record in 2024 year to date?
Yeah, I think there was a huge bump in the stock price. I think the question in my mind is, if you're someone who comes in to turn around a brand or improve a brand, are there lessons that other CEOs can take from this in terms of retail and e-commerce, Jess?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing you have to do is go and talk to your best like customers, your best relationships. Like he's got to be on a bit of an apology tour to a certain extent, and that's what I would be doing if I were him. I'd rebuild the trust and the credibility with the employees because they probably feel very jaded. And to your point on the innovation side, you've got to be able to inspire this team to come back and rally around and believe again. So I think it's going to be very important for him in his first 90 days to reestablish what's that strategic plan and vision, and not do it from a tops down perspective, but get that from the ground up, in feeding into, what is regaining the soul of Nike, because that's what has been lost, right? It does feel so corporate versus they had their own identity and they were paving the way for decades, right? In not only innovation, but just how you operate and how you go to market and do things differently, and build this connection with your customers. And that does feel lost. And so I think he's got to do that very early on to be successful. And I think the less you can talk about like cost savings and profitability, that's all going to come, right? When you're doing the right things and you're delivering value for your customers, and the shareholder stuff will come. So if he comes in, it's like, oh, we're going to restructure and cost cutting, like that's not exciting to the employees. That's not going to help get the innovation back. My 2 cents.
Yeah, look, I think these are all brilliant and right on point, which is making sure you have great conversations with your customers and partners, with your top employees that you want to make sure stay, perhaps re-recruit folks that left because they've been frustrated in the last 4 or 5 years. Like, everything anyone says about eBay, they have brought a lot of old souls back to the eBay universe who spent a lot of time and really love the brand and are committed to it. And Jamie Iannone, because he had his long history, he knew where all the people were that had left eBay to come back. And so I think there's perhaps, another eBay later CEO than Donahoe, maybe the new CEO of Nike, can also maybe bring some folks back to Nike. And I think innovation is like, it's hard to overstate the importance of innovation to a brand like Nike. If consumers don't appreciate your next release, if it's not like, oh, we're going to add a new colorway, like, who cares? Like, who's your next collab?
That's not
like
innovation.
Nike as a brand needs to be a lot edgier.
And where's your technology, right? Like, I mean, that's the thing. It's interesting. I just bought a new pair of running shoes, and more brands are going like to this chunkier type of sole. And I was like, is that the Hoka effect, or is there really technology there that says like this huge ass sole is what like is what's going to make you run faster? I don't know, but there is. I think
that's our quote for the week. This whole huge ass sole will make you run faster.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, give it to me. I'd love to get my runs down, by a minute or so. But yeah, I mean, I think that Nike's got to get back to that technology and the innovation that really is what set them apart. And to your point on the collaborations, like, can there be another Air Jordan? Probably not, but that's gotta come from somewhere. So
yeah, they have to go back to the culture. Who are the figures that move culture? Who the all of the celebrities, influencers that connect with the youths. They got to get back to the youths.
They do need the youths. They need youth. Not through Vinny, but my cousin Vinny. But they need the youth, and they gotta have some dreamers, man. They've got to figure it out.
Exactly. They have to sell that inspiration. So Donahoe, again, we're gonna pour out some liquor for Mr. JD, and can't say, but we told you so.
We did.
Keep it locked into the Watson weekend here if you want to hear what's going to happen next. I think that's something you should learn as a lesson for this. So I'm glad you guys stay locked into the show. That's the show we have for you today, and it feels like we could keep going on and on. There's more stories we had to cut, but I'm excited about all the content today, and there's going to be more next week.
Yeah, excited to see you guys. Let us know if there's a story we missed. Be our eyes and ears. Have a good weekend. Lots of love. See ya.